Yeah, so have you guys noticed that it seems like the media is finally just like gloves off with Trump? Like the whole time we've been like it's been, and I would say a fair and valid criticism of mainstream media to be like, because they always frame it like, Trump is loose with the truth in regard to X, Y, and Z or whatever. And now, like, the CNN chyron is just like Trump is lying about winning states or whatever. We were watching the returns on NBC, and he came out to give his speech. And like halfway through, they just cut him off, and we're like, okay, so he's telling a bunch of lies. Here
and we're not going to play it. This was Tuesday night, his late night Tuesday speech. Yeah.
Well, it undermines democracy, right? When you have somebody who is basically saying like, we don't have to count votes. We don't have to, whatever. Like the more of the people who are in his like camp that take on that position because he does, that really undermines our ability to have a peaceful transition of power. And so, I get freedom of speech, but there does come a place where we have to like cut that off and say, no, this really is dangerous.
Well, freedom of speech doesn't mean that they have to play your lies on CNN.
That's true.
Like, that has nothing to do with the First Amendment.
You don't have to platform anybody. It's your private platform.
Well, it's like every time they read one of his tweets as like the news, like, oh, today the president tweeted, and I'm like, that's not, like, stop it. You're just giving him more of a platform. And Twitter has also been shutting him down a lot in the last day or two, which has been very satisfactory.
Well, before what is now probably going to be lame duck era, the things he tweeted, the things he said could turn into action. They were consequential. He was an elected official.
They will be archived. Like some historian will have to go back through his tweets when
and so major media outlets were kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place sometimes, and trying to determine, do we cover this? Don't we? How do we fact check in real time? And I don't think they ever really perfected it. But what happened was, as soon as all the ballots were cast, they were like, yeah, no, we're not gonna respect this guy anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't even feel like it's really about respect necessarily. I think they're just like, well, he's done, so we can kind of do whatever. Like, he's on his way out. The die has been cast. Like, they did the same thing today on CNN, and he gave that press conference. Halfway through, they cut him off. And like just started listing off. They're like, okay, he said this, that's not true. He said this, that's not true. And then Anderson Cooper went on TV and called him an obese turtle on his back.
Did he say that for real?
Yes, he did.
That's not disrespect.
Okay, that is fairly disrespectful. Yeah, I'll give that one.
Like, they don't care about him because they know he's fucking out the door, and they're so tired of him. I mean, it's
gosh.
Anderson, how can you say the president is a racist? Cooper went on and like made a fat joke about him on air. Like, wonderful, great.
Oh my goodness. I was just enjoying the thought that like in the future there's going to be a classroom full of like 10th or 11th graders who are going to have to do an entire treatment on Covfefe, right? Like I'm just really enjoying like these 11th graders of the future are really going to have to sit down and they're going to be reading a history book that has an entire chapter dedicated to whether or not the president was literate. Like I love it. Like, I love it.
Did you see on election night, he had a tweet that he quickly deleted, but people had captured screenshots of it before it left, where he was railing against the Poles, but he spelled it Poles.
Yep.
So it looked like he was going on a tirade about Polish people.
About my people? Yeah.
Oh, I see. I took it because I don't know if you all know, but like this group of Atlanta strippers did this get your booty to the polls thing. And it was such a great video, and get your booty to the polls was trending. So I was actually like, oh, so now you want to pay attention to the Atlanta strippers. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Georgia is going to go blue.
Dude, strippers are going to deliver Georgia to Biden. This rules.
Listen.
Yeah.
Great work, ladies.
Best strip clubs in the country in Atlanta. Yeah. I don't think, back to Flo's point on us reading about Covfefe and things like that, I mean, you're the one who gave us the whole read through of Lies My Teacher Told Me. Like, There's a part of me that thinks that there's going to be these like white marble Romanesque statues of him. And we'll just be learning about him the same way we learned about this bland education of like an Andrew Jackson, who was the most disgusting man to ever fucking sit in the office until Trump.
That's an interesting take. And it feels on par with how we've typically done history. I almost feel like, how do you do that to a Trump-like figure?
Right.
When, like, because you can't pull any clips, you can't pull any quotes, right? Like, there's no way to make him sound like statuesque and like dignified, right? Everything he says is just.
Yeah, but I think it won't even take long enough to where it will like look like history. I think in the next 10 years or so, when the Republicans are now running like some spawn of Hitler and David Duke that they've cooked up in a petri dish in a lab somewhere, and it's so bad that the Democrats will be like, Trump will be getting the treatment that W. Bush is getting right now from the Democrats. Will be like, remember the days when this was the guy? Man, we thought he was bad, but we had no idea how good he was. And it's like, hey guys, this guy's still a fucking war criminal. Like, for real, come on. Dems, get it the fuck together. Like, this guy was an asshole too.
Yeah, we'll be like, I miss the days when the worst thing was babies in cages.
Yeah, really.
That's hard to think about.
That is hard to think about. I was going to say.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Did I go too deep?
No. It's just, it's the way that, remember when you used to Google like biggest failure and George W. Bush's face came up, and now we like think that's quaint. Like, you're not wrong. It's
all
just
Donald
hard to
Trump has
imagine
to do to
this moment.
completely rehabilitate his entire image is learn how to paint watercolors, and he's fucking in like Flynn. He'll be at fucking football games with Ellen DeGeneres in no time. It won't take hardly any time at all.
There's a great Hard Times article titled like, obviously they're satire. It was titled "Famous Artist George W. Bush Canceled Due to Uncovered War Crimes History."
I'm just wondering, like, I was thinking in the future without context that Donald Trump's statue ends up being erected, and underneath it says, "I'm the least racist person
you'll ever meet."
Like, I'm just like somebody taking him at face value, and that being the quote, and like the George Washington never told a lie thing. It's like Donald Trump was the least racist president we ever had.
And he like goes down in our lore over that.
Well, like education, right? Like this started with like, what are we going to tell the future? It's so different now with social media. I mean, it was all online. We saw everything. It's like, I don't know what they'll say in the future, but I also think that means bad things too. Cause then like the folks who idolize him are going to be like, oh, look at what he did. It's just, it's shitty to think about, but it's all there for posterity. There's nothing we can do about it.
Which I guess is good, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but like, will his tweets suddenly become the Mein Kampf of like the 21st century, where people are like, I don't know, should we let people read them or not?
No, you have to remember that like half the country still voted for this dude, right? And it's just like, no, I think it's bad too, because it continues this idea that like, it's okay to be president and like, just like tweet inflammatory shit whenever you think about it. And like that troubles me in my brain. He's not a president. Funny. He's lowered the bar to the level that I don't know we can get it back up again.
Yeah.
He's also weirdly like catty and like just historically has tweeted about the dumbest things. Just like Lady Gaga had the worst Grammy parties out of everyone. Sorry, I just went Boston there.
Do you remember when he got into the like Robert Pattinson breakup with, what was the woman from Twilight? What was her name? And like she was like allegedly cheating on him with like some movie director in Hollywood or something, and like Donald Trump weighed in and was like, Robert Pattinson, you could do better. And I was like, that is like, it's just so absurd that like those are the things that interested him.
I think there will never be a president like him.
I feel once.
Dear God,
I hope God. I know. Can we like say those like? I mean, please.
It's the president. And I don't appreciate that, Dave.
It's gonna get a lot worse than Trump. I'm like, mark my words. I guarantee it.
It's Skylar, I'm going to curse you in like 10 years when this becomes reality. Like, Skylar.
It won't be my. I'm just the messenger. No, okay. So once it's like official, right? Because right now, as we record this, and hopefully by the time you're listening to this, some more numbers have come in and it is official. And Biden is the next president-elect of the United States. But at the time that we were recording this, that is still remains to be seen. It seems likely, but not a sure thing by any means. So I think
sure thing.
I want to do.
I hop in and call it a sure thing.
Dave's going to call it a sure thing.
He definitely has Pennsylvania and Nevada.
What I would like to do, maybe for a Patreon episode, is do like everybody get their top 5 Trump moments going, because there have been. The ones I have really enjoyed parts of this, just out of how just completely bananas and like out of control some of the shit has been. And once he's like on his way out, I think we can maybe like laugh about it without feeling
until
as
that
terrified
day, though,
by it.
I'm like basically not sleeping because I'm convinced that he's gonna fuck this up somehow, and so I'm just like. On that day, though, that it is official and he walks himself out that door, we're gonna probably.
I hope he doesn't walk himself out. I hope they have to drag him out.
Yeah, they're gonna have to swaddle
whenever
him.
he leaves the premises, I want to see him leaving the premises, and then we can start joking about this. But I can't yet. I can't.
Oh.
Well, we got a lot to cover.
Yeah, let's go.
For now, yeah. You guys want to get the show going?
Yes.
All right, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Voices, the things they said. Voices, some from those dead. All the voices heard. Voices, things we say. Voices, they're in your head. All the voices heard.
Hello, everyone. You have Kempa.
And Skylar.
No Shannon, but Flo.
And an extremely special guest in Councilmember-elect, Katie Valenzuela. How you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
No, we're excited to have you. And just to follow up on our loss of Shannon, she should be back Monday, right? Early next week. So
Yes.
She's back for good, I believe, because I think we only have one gallbladder. So I think no more gallbladders to take
No
out.
more gallbladders to take out.
Is it possible for her to regrow an even worse gallbladder now that the other one is out?
No, well, again, you're not supposed to put these things out because it's 2020, and things that aren't supposed to happen when you speak them into existence this year.
A shitty gallbladder.
In 2019, that was not possible.
Coronavirus,
okay?
Yeah.
In all the years that came before 2019, that was not possible. But this year,
yeah, let us not speak anything into existence that we could not handle.
Yeah, you know, if she does grow one back, I can take that one out too.
No, Skylar. Once again,
not a problem.
It's a hard no.
So
no, pass.
We got a lot of ground to cover today. Obviously, the elections were Tuesday. There's a lot more votes and everything to count, both locally, statewide, and federally. But we thought we would have the Councilmember-elect on with us to discuss some of these races, some of these ballot measures, where they are today, and some reflections that we might have on them. So to begin, how about we start with the County Board of Supervisors race, District 3, Gregg Fishman against Rich Desmond. Currently, and again, we heard from the county yesterday being Wednesday, that just under half the votes that will be coming in are in. So there's room for change in a lot of these races. Mm-hmm. The Fishman Desmond race, again, Fishman, Democrat, who has gotten really the weight of the county and local Dems behind him. Desmond, Republican, I believe, although it's a nonpartisan position, lifelong cop, running against each other. It's so funny because I wasn't looking at our Zoom screen, and I was like, oh my God, are we okay?
Are we okay? Does somebody have some GI issues tonight?
Do we need to take a break?
Right.
So currently, a pleasant surprise, I think. Fishman is winning by a little bit in this race. He's got 31,627 votes to Rich Desmond's 30,254. He's up by about, let's say 1,370, something like that. Again, it's close. Again, there's a lot more to come in.
How many points is that?
He's up by 2 points, 51 to 49, basically.
It's close.
Okay, so we're happy, but we are trepidatious because we have a ways left to go with this one.
We do have a ways left to go with this one. We are happy.
And a lot of these races too, and it's the same on the federal level, you don't know what direction late votes are going to go. I feel like previously in Sacramento, usually we kind of do stick to a similar tack throughout the vote dumps. If anything, they tend to veer a tiny bit to the more progressive person. Katie, I don't know if that was the case with you and Steve.
Yeah, I mean, the ratio kind of stayed the same, actually. I mean, my vote percentage grew a little bit, but for the most part, it was consistent. Yeah.
Okay. But in a race like this, a 2-point difference, I don't think it's smart for anybody to really say anything. I think you had an 8-point lead when it first came out, right?
No, I was this close, actually. I think I was only like 3-4 points away, so it was still pretty tight. Yeah, and then it grew.
Yeah.
Well, that's okay. So hopefully it grows with the more progressive person, but I guess we won't know for a few weeks. And listeners, even if it says 100%. Precincts reporting, that doesn't mean anything. And Sac County people, please delete that from your goddamn website. Please delete it. Like, everyone gets it wrong every single election, and it's very frustrating. And you just don't like seeing misinformation out there. But yeah, any other thoughts on Fishman Desmond?
Fingers crossed, both sets.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move along.
I definitely wasn't expecting that. So
yeah, I think we were all worried, honestly, that he was going to be behind, but this was nice to see. So yeah, both fingers, all the fingers.
Yeah. It is now. There are definitely more registered Democrats by a big margin in that portion of the county, but you just don't know. And you just don't know when that will finally manifest.
Yeah.
So again, we'll see. Next race, friend of the show, Mai Vang, against, what was that?
That was like my woo, because that one is so close. Like, I can't even hardly
really
talk
close.
about
So close.
Stop clicking away from the Zoom because I was like, was that a caw? Like,
No.
okay.
Does Mai have her noise? Does she have like a Steinberg noise on the
No, we don't
show?
have a Mai noise yet. She has to win office first.
Yeah.
Okay. So Mai against Pastor Les Simmons for District 8 of Sacramento City Council. Again, about 50% of the votes put in, as far as we know. This one's super tight. Mai's got 50.8%. Pastor Les has 49.2%.
Yep.
So
it's like 130 votes or something,
Yeah.
and there's like 8,000 votes in or something like that, right? It's
it's
I cannot even imagine what is going on, like what is now and must be going on in Mai's head until this is like sorted out. You would have to scrape me off the ceiling.
There's been a little bit of that. I mean, there are some group chats going on. The squad has a signal chat. Don't worry, it'll be fine. Go on a hike, like go take coffee for a walk. But yeah, this one is wild close. And it shows, I mean, because Les was not that close to her in the primary. And it shows that realtor money, that freaking realtor money and what it can buy.
That's a real bummer.
If he ends up pulling this off, and this is something I've thought a lot about, it's like, what do you feel about a race that you won in those ways? Like, you're forever indebted to them. If you ever piss them off, they're going to run somebody else and you have no base now to defend yourself. Like, it's just, I really hope this goes Mai's way, because I don't know how Les as a council member after all this is going to work out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and we'll get into state races, the props as well. But, you know, the way I saw some of those fall out, I saw a lot of money thrown in a certain direction, and it affects things. And
It does.
I was really, when I saw this come out, this first batch here for Mai and Pastor Les, that was my initial thought, is that, you know, that real estate money really helped him.
Yeah. But honestly, I mean, I'm also, when we get there, I'm going to point out a couple races where it didn't work. And like, I think the money grip is loosening in some cases, especially locally. Like the fact that Mai is still pulling out a lead after that massive infusion of attack ads is like, that's pretty damn impressive. So, and that's all people power, you know? So there's something to that.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, everybody put your energy into the air for Mai.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, races like this are going to take weeks before we finally know who the winner is. I'm not sure, but it looks like the county is going to do the same thing they've done in previous elections. They do ballot dumps Tuesday and Friday afternoons. So,
which, like, also, can you help me understand why they don't do this daily? Because as someone who was in this position just a few short months ago, it's like, I know you have updated numbers. Like, why can't you update the website? Why does it have to wait 3 days and stomach aches and lots of pizza to get me through this moment?
Why do they still have 100 precincts reporting when
Right.
they know
it doesn't make no
they
sense.
know what it does to our general population? Like, I don't know. The county really needs to get their acts together. Maybe we can put some COVID money towards this, huh, Flo?
I just had this
Flo,
thing popped
put
into my
in-
head about Scott Jones to do the money to the county registrar.
Yeah,
and
I was just about to say, Flo, put
that's
in a
all
call to
bad.
Sheriff Jones and see if he'll give some of that money back so we can get
That's all
working on
bad.
this
I
stuff.
don't like
Yeah,
that.
let's get a deputy who can code over there to the voter side.
Yeah,
Oh,
let's
dear.
involve the cops in the elections. This is all great.
This is a great idea. This
These
feels
are
good.
all great ideas. I
It
love
feels
it.
right. I don't think I need to think this fully through. Let's just do it.
I mean, they'd be the only people who could afford it.
Right, exactly.
Exactly.
There's got to be a deputy who can
I
code.
do not want Scott Jones anywhere near the county registrar's office. We'll just say that for the record.
Yeah.
All right, fine. Or a canine that can code. Whatever. We'll move on. How about, should we do a couple of the measures?
Yeah.
Sure.
Let's begin with the big fight that we've all had for renters' rights, Measure C, the rent control measure. We actually haven't talked about this measure for weeks on the show, but I actually ended up phone banking for a good 2 weeks on it, and it did not end well for our side. Let's see where we are right now. At no, we have 61.7%, and yes, 38.3%.
Yeah, it's pretty fucking decisive.
That's game over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Reflections on that.
It's a bummer, but it's also like this was uphill from the start.
Yeah.
This was going to be a hard battle, and it sucks because like this is also like I feel like there's like a legacy of rent control activism now in this town that Measure C was sort of the culmination of, you know, and so it really represented like a ton of work by a ton of people, and it is disheartening to see it get beaten, especially beaten as badly as it was beaten.
Yeah.
I mean, they had like 3 months to pull that campaign off, though, and they were spent. What was it? Ended up at like 1.2 in the opposition camp, and like the thing that really pissed me off about the realtors this election and Prop 21 too, right, is that they used the need for more affordable housing to like drive a wedge and people who do care. I got this really amazing email actually from a small landlord who was really pissed at me, but like at the end of her email, she's just like, my adult son still lives with me because he can't find affordable housing and like, you're going to make it worse. And so I'm like, you know, this is a good snapshot of like the weird hypocrisy, like
cognizant dissonance. Yes.
It is. is, but like, you know, she's hearing a message that was like, this is going to stop new development. Forget the fact that state law, I mean, I literally argued with landlords in the last week that I'm like, state law precludes it. We cannot regulate new development. What are you talking about? And they're like, well, that's not what I heard. And like, that's what it was all about. So like,
well, that's not what I heard is the theme of this election.
Yes,
that's
100%.
That's precisely it.
Yeah.
And it's the big money that confounds the discourse that can really drive a wedge into something, which is why the most intelligent races against people power are the ones that undermine and use the people's terminology and messaging against them.
Absolutely. And like, this is the thing though, is like, I mean, rent control, I think rarely has something passed in the first try, especially in the ballot process. So like, this is just part of our journey. You know, we're going to be like, I mean, most other cities had to do this 2-3 times. And like, we can still do this in Sacramento and we kind of have to. Somebody was arguing with me, like, and we'll talk about strong mayor, like, oh, well, you should drop it now. Cause I'm like, this is not the same thing. It's like, you know, we're talking about housing is a human right. And like, people don't have access to housing and that can't be dropped. Like, we have to figure out how to protect them. We're never going to build our way out of this freaking crisis.
And I want everyone out there to know that we can tack this onto Darrell for the rest of his political career. Basically. So unless President Biden pulls him out to DC, he's probably going to try and get back in the state house. We talk about this ad nauseum from now until that motherfucker is out of office. Pardon my language. But like this was his position. This is where he landed on something that could have really saved people, could have really kept them in their houses, and might cost locally people's lives. So thanks, Darrell.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the thing that really like is going to be challenging, I think, and where the real organizing is going to have to happen in a place like Sacramento is that we're a lot closer than other cities because our housing only became super unaffordable to buy for a lot of people really recently, right? So up until that point, we were the place where if you were okay with not being in the big cities, you lived here to be able to potentially one day afford to buy a house, you know? And so we're sitting at almost 50-50 in terms of renters to owners in a city like Sacramento. And so I think a lot of owners are the opposition, like, are just like, no, this seems like, you know, this is going to be hard for me if one day I want to rent my house and one day I want, you know, like, I think that's where we're getting a lot of our opposition. And unlike a place like San Francisco, where most people who are voting in that city are going to be renters, unfortunately, that's not Sacramento. And so it makes it even harder. So on a first try, I'm actually really proud that it had almost 40% of the vote, because I mean, that's, you know, that's a lot closer than I even would have expected given just what the demographics of this town look like.
No, for real. Yeah. And I need to respond directly to a tweet from one of our favorite editorial writers, Gil Duran.
Oh, I was going to go off on this dude too. Like,
can
take
we
it
just
away.
like, I know. So his tweet, I will read it just because people need to understand. The people of Sacramento have spoken, delivering a crushing defeat to Measure C, the crown jewel of the so-called People's Campaign. 62% no, 37% yes. Big reality check for Sac's Democratic Socialists who picked an unwise fight and lost big. Let me tell you something, Gil Duran. You do not decide what is a victory and what is a loss. And in our mind, the fact that this has been talked about, the fact that we built infrastructure, that we have gained traction, the fact that it was even on the fucking ballot was a victory. And so we are not going to stop, and you don't get to decide when we're crushed, because we're not. And we actually did get a really big win. Like, the next tweet was just like, oh yeah, Measure A looks like it's gonna fail, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, fuck you. like that's a big deal that we built as much as we did in the last couple of months. And I don't want anybody to take anything that folks like Gil Duran say seriously, because like the fact that we're even in this game still in the middle of a pandemic is a huge victory, and this is just the beginning.
Skylar, also, before you hop in, can I just give some historical context to Gil? Gil Duran is the man who worked with Governor Jerry Brown as his press guy to end redevelopment housing dollars throughout our state. Gil put us in the housing crisis we are in today. Gil does not like the poors, and that's what he's spiking the football on right now. So Gil, shame on fucking you, man. You are the worst of austerity Democrats, and everything we see outside, everyone's suffering we see, you were a part of that. Go Sky.
Yeah, I mean, basically that's what I was going to say. Is just like, dude, if you find yourself, if you are a person like who on election night goes on Twitter and is like, ha ha ha, housing advocates, fuck all of you, you fucking lose again. It's like, maybe take a look in the mirror and like fucking recognize the fact that you are a Disney villain at this point. Like, what the fuck? How are you going to go off? How are you going to spike the football on renters who are suffering? What is that?
It's incredible.
It boggles my mind. I will say he went tit for tat with me on Twitter for a few tweets in a row, which is more than I thought that he would put into it. He even busted out the French with me.
That's good. No, and I mean, like, the thing that kills me about him and like Marcus Bertone and others is like they have no idea what we were doing behind the scene. We mobilized hundreds of volunteers. We knocked on thousands of doors, made like thousands of phone calls. And so when he says something like the so-called People's Campaign, it's like, no, you don't get to delegitimize us. We know what we are. We know what we're building. The fact that we've taken something that started with my race and started with Bernie and expanded it to this level is huge. And if he thinks that he can put us in a box like that, it lights my fire even more. And I want him to know that, right? Like every time you think you're like putting water on the flames, you're not. Like you're just giving us more fucking fuel. We're like, okay, cool. We're just going to do it bigger next time. Let's go.
Yeah. Yep. It doesn't. Yeah, I totally agree, Katie. And it doesn't stop there. And I can tell you from things I've read, things that he's written privately, this was personal for Gil. Gil was on a vendetta on this one, and he really wanted this to die because to him, it was a bad faith thing. But he used the term bad faith just because it wasn't done like their old school austerity Democrat, type of way. So Gil, this is definitely not over. We know you hate renters. We know you hate poor people. The people of Sacramento know that you do. And we'll continue to like have these fucking conversations with you.
Yeah, no, and keep tweeting, bro. Keep tweeting because you're just adding more folks to our ranks every time you do. So you keep on going and I'll just keep recruiting folks. It'll be a beautiful partnership.
Yep.
Yeah. And thanks for getting rid of affordable housing dollars under Jerry Brown.
Yeah.
Measure A.
Are we just going to blow right past Measure B, the crown jewel of the evening?
We can't do that.
Okay. I feel like, Flo, can you tell us what Measure B is and where you stand on how this landed?
Measure B was on the ballot basically because the census was delayed, and we have this independent redistricting committee that is charged with looking at the districts within the city of Sacramento. And so because the census was delayed, this was on the ballot to make sure that they could delay their work as well to wait for the census numbers to come in. And so this was the reason why you never saw any ads for Measure B, or there wasn't any opposition written down for Measure B. It was just kind of like an administrative thing to be like, yeah, this is running late, so therefore this is also going to be running late. And yet like 30,000 people said no. And I'm just really confused about whether those people were just like, I'm confused if they were thinking they were voting against redistricting because they thought that was what was on their ballot, or if they were like, no, you do your redistricting without the census data. Like, I don't know, but I'm legitimately confused. So Sacramento, can you make it make sense for me? Because it doesn't right now.
Spoiler alert, they're not going to.
Yeah. I think this told us how many Q people we have in Sacramento. Our percentage.
Or how many people just don't read the measures and just vote no on
No.
Like, oh, the city wants something? No.
Because I was like, I saw some people ask questions online. They were like, well, I think they're just going to gerrymander with this. And I was like, actually, this is one of the places where I think we're doing well. Like, A, that's not what's on your ballot, but also like the fact that to be on this independent redistricting committee, you can't work for or run for office for 10 years after being on it. That's a pretty big chunk. Like, that's really called playing the long game. If you're like, I'm going to write the district and then I'm going to run in a decade. Like, okay, like, fine, do that, right? Because that's like seriously playing the long game. So I actually think that that's one of the stronger things that we do well in the city of Sacramento. So for you then to just be like, and you have to do it without the data that would inform that to make it so it's not a gerrymandered process is absurd. So no on Measure B, people, just why? Why?
There isn't a good answer. There's no answer that you'd be like, oh.
Oh, okay.
Where are Seth and Amy from SNL's Weekend Update to do a really with Seth and Amy? Like, really, Sacramento? You're just gonna show up and just vote against this thing that makes total sense? Like, really? Like, I need that right now.
Is that all?
Yeah, that's Measure B.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get back on track to.
Flo, I'm not telling you how I voted on Measure B.
And there is one. I only have 29,999. Chaos theory. That's my only other thing. People
Listen, I have my reasons. All right.
Okay.
Where we go one, we go all. So Measure A, is that what we're doing now? A.
Yeah.
Oh, our favorite topic, the strong mayor.
Yes.
Denied.
Denied. Who wants to cover this one first?
I think Katie, take it away.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the power grab by the mayor to get lots of decision-making authority and say he was going to be held accountable by a council he could veto. And he threw in a bunch of equity ideas that weren't his to try to make it sound better. But thankfully, reason prevailed. And we did a massive campaign against this, including with the People's Campaign, Gilderman, remember, and defeated it. And I'm super stoked that democracy fucking won on this one, because this was a really bad idea. Like, there's no case evidence for it. And the best argument was, well, other big cities do it. I'm like, yeah, and how the hell are they doing on policy? Like, help me out. Like, what's better? I don't get it.
Not better.
Not better. No clear problem statement. Nobody would point to the city manager, but they were all talking about the bureaucracy that slows things down. It was just all the things.
This is a funny one. I guess just to begin, like, Marcos wrote a whole piece about how these damn millennials were wasting their time in their fight against Measure A. And the funny thing to me is, like, who was wasting whose time here?
Right.
Darrell was wasting all of our goddamn time. We didn't want to have this fucking fight.
Right.
Dude, the one thing I said to him when he called me at the end of that call to say he was putting it forward, I'm like, please don't do this. Like, we have too much work to do. And Gregg Fishman was on the ballot and we had this massive pandemic that we're still dealing with. Like, please don't do this. And then we get blamed because we have to engage in the fight that's been brought to us by somebody with power. Like, I hate the fact that people like Marcus, of the older generation, I will say, keep telling us how to spend our goddamn time. I'm like, I am intelligent enough to decide where to spend my time. I have won an elected office and I'm doing what my constituents fucking need me to do. Like, why do you keep questioning my judgment? I mean, it's just who does this? It's like a total patriarchal, like, oh, you millennials. And like, they use that terminology when not everybody even in the group was a millennial, by the way. I mean, Heather Fargo, Lauren Hammond. I mean, like, this wasn't a millennial-led effort, but like, they picked on us.
Famous millennial former mayor Heather Fargo.
Us. Yeah, they were trying to delegitimize it by saying, oh, you young people. And I'm like, come on.
The other thing that he pointed out in that article that was really like weird to me is he's like, like, we live in a place where like the county has all these problems and there's the Fishman race. And then he goes off about how like bad Sheriff Jones is, as if like that's something that we should be working on instead. And I'm like, is there like a race that I'm not aware of that we should be focusing on here? Like, why are you even bringing up Sheriff Jones? Like, also, there isn't anybody who's opposed to Measure A who's like stoked about
County is
Sheriff
killing.
Jones. Like it does, like it doesn't. The argument was like completely asinine. And also to like, I don't know, it is extremely patronizing to be like, well, here's where the real issues are. And it's like literally everybody who's on the Measure A campaign is also working on these other campaigns. Like, I don't know, like literally nothing about what Marcos had to say in that article or in his little like election night fucking chat with Steinberg, which is basically, he's just saying the same exact shit. Was just like, I mean, it doesn't make any fucking sense to me. Like, I can't get there with it.
It sounds like the group wants to talk about this chat with Steinberg.
Oh my
Can
God.
you tell me, as somebody who didn't view it, what happened?
So I will start your flow because I know you're itching to say something, but like if I don't get this off my chest, I feel like my heart's gonna explode. No, it was like a fireside chat style with Marcus and the mayor, and it was pre-scheduled for 10:30, right? And so they're thinking this is gonna be some victory chat probably for him talking about the future of the city, and it turned into like a quasi-depressing, gosh, you lost this one.
That's a lot of fun.
And nobody ever talks about the money too, by the way, which we should talk about at some point. But the thing that really pissed me off is like, we have both, I know at least me and Flo have talked to Marcus and said, this is not a personality thing with the mayor. This is not about Darrell. Like, we're not doing this because we don't agree with Darrell. We don't agree with him on some things, but like, this is bigger than that. And the whole conversation was like, gosh, why don't these progressive millennials like you? You tried as hard as you could. They just don't see how hard you're working. And I was like almost yelling into the like, that's not what it's about. And they're like, gosh, yeah, I don't know. They just don't understand what I'm doing behind the scenes. So go ahead, Flo.
I just want to point out that, number one, I feel like we have to keep all these campaign materials because this is the like proposition or the measure that just won't die. So I feel like in 2026, just know that we will be once again relitigating whether or not we should have a strong mayor because we want to be a grown-up city like all the other cities who still have the same problems we do. So I just feel like it's not going to go away. I have lived in this city for 10 years and I have voted against this now twice. Like that just makes no sense. But what really irritates me about this is the part where Darrell said when he first ran for this job that he had no intentions of bringing this back, and yet here we are. And so I am frustrated by the idea.
There's countless fucking minutes of footage of him doing that.
Exactly.
That exact thing.
Structure doesn't make you strong. He actually said that at one of the debates. Yes. I'm like, exactly.
So I'm just so frustrated that this was even on the ballot in the first place. And I really want to shout out, all the people who really worked on the campaign and who spent time and energy and who put on forums and who did all of these things, because you took time away from other important fights, right? Like, we were already having an election and there were already big things to do, and this had to be something on top of that. And so, when Dave, you said earlier, let's make sure that we remember these things when, other offices are sought. I'm also still reeling from, March with Measure G. So now I have Measure G and Measure C. And I think part of the reason why I thought this was just so offensive is because you said 4 years ago you had no intentions of bringing it back. I know you polled on it before this pandemic started. And then you show up and you invoke the name of George Floyd. And he even did that on Tuesday night when he was having his fireside chat with Marcos. And he was just like, George Floyd this, and maybe I should have done these things after. And I was like, you think? I was like, is nobody going to bring up the fact that we've heard these broken promises before? And nobody holds Darrell accountable for the fact that he knows how a general ballot measure works. And so if he was going to run Measure U and he knew that it was just going to be used to float the city, then don't go out and promise everybody in God's creation something with this money. Don't tell us that's what it's going to be spent for.
We told him that it was going to happen. This was the primary reason. We're like, you should make this a 2/3 measure, or you should put stronger community oversight in it. He knew exactly what he was doing. And now he's like, oh gosh, look at this terrible thing that's happened.
Right. And so I'm just like you want to be held accountable. I want to hold you accountable for the things that I know you should know and that you lied to people about, because the responsible thing is to say, I can't tell you how this money is going to be spent because this is a general tax measure. That would have been the responsible thing. But when you, as an attorney, as a 20-something year attorney at the time, and a former Senate pro tem, run around town and tell everybody how you're going to spend the money, don't come back with the mea culpa to me about how it didn't happen. No, I'm holding you accountable. So when I voted no this time, I was holding you accountable for all of the other times that you lied to us and that you didn't do what you said you were going to do. That is my accountability. So you wanted a mayoral accountability and equity act, boom, you got it. You got some accountability for that ass, and now you have
how about that, Darrell?
Measures coming to you.
How about that, Darrell?
I feel like
just
Globetrotters here, man.
Because
this is ruthless.
Measure G also, because suddenly now you got 10 million for the kids when it has something in it for you, but you didn't have 10 million for the kids when COVID wasn't even a thing. I got real questions, bruh. I got real questions.
I mean, and just to be clear to Marcus, because he doesn't think we understand what a mayor can and cannot do, and our term of accountability is based off of our actual understanding of the fact that he's not Alwa's bird.
Yes.
Yeah. And that you don't just lie to people if you don't have the power. If I say to you, hey, Skylar, I'm going to pay your rent for the next 12 months, but I'm broke and I don't do that, I know how money works. And Skylar can be like, fuck you, Flo. You said you were going to pay my rent for the next 12 months and my rent didn't get paid. Like, that's how that works. Like, it's not my, I didn't actually have the money. Then you don't make promises you can't keep. That's how accountability works. If you say you're going to do it, you do it. And if you don't have the power to do it by yourself, you don't say it until you get 4 other people to say they are also going to do it. That's what accountability looks like, just so we can define these terms very clearly.
Boom.
Anybody got anything to add?
A small thing to add. Actually, no. I think Flo said it.
Yeah, I mean, that was amazing. I'm gonna set that to music.
You know, they have those sleep time stories in the Calm app. That could be your sleep time story. Like, oh.
I think there's a final question of, do we like this current form of our current iteration and dynamic of city council and city manager? I think there are things that can be fixed, but I don't think the way to fix them is through a mayor shoving through last second this just like Frankenstein piece of legislation that no one's had a good look at. We need time for this. We got to sit down on this. We got to look at what's the right way to do it.
But like, we pulled off a Herculean feat. I mean, Flo had that letter in like days where we said what we wanted, but it didn't happen. But thank you for saying that, because that's the other thing that they kept saying. It's like, gosh, I guess they just like the status quo. No, nobody said, I mean, I said this over and over again, voting no on A is not saying the status quo is thumbs up A-okay. I mean, it doesn't mean there aren't things we can improve and that we need to do better as a city. It's just saying this ain't it.
Yeah.
When I'm looking at time, I don't want to. Oh no, we got to do the props. Yeah.
So I was gonna say, why don't let's visit the school board part of things, and then we'll like lightning round the props.
All right. School board. We'll start with our dear friend Lavinia, friend of the show, who was on, what was it, 2 episodes ago?
Great say.
Yeah.
She's doing very well.
Yeah, she's on track to do the thing.
Against an incumbent.
Against who I thought was a very powerful incumbent. So I'm super, super stoked to see that.
Absolutely. That should put the school district on notice that the community's done with the shenanigans and wants to figure it out for the kids. So I'm super stoked for her. That was a job well earned. She went through the gauntlet on that. I mean, we were all trying to do our best to defend her, but the way they threw things at her just was, anyways, real frustrating to watch. But she handled it as well as she could. So I'm proud of her.
Friend of the show, Marcos, wasn't that great to her.
Yeah, and I will say that anybody who thinks that she's just going to be some shill for the teachers union or some person who's just going to come in and do whatever, like, you don't know Gracie, because that's not at all her personality. She really is an advocate, and she really is a person who will, look things over and, won't do things just because of the politics. And I mean, a lot of people say I'm not a politician, but like Gracie's really not a politician. So but I think this will be like good in a way for our cities, but also it'll be fun in the way that, you wish like a fun president would be when they're not really a politician, not the horrifying way it's been for the last 4 years. So I'm really actually looking forward to Gracie not being a politician and being on this school board and really championing these equity issues, because she gets that stuff. She knows it really well as a social worker, and as somebody who has lived experience, and she's very thoughtful about the things that she goes about doing, and it is really, really willing to do the work. So I'm excited about having an out-of-the-box candidate. This is what we mean when we wanted an out-of-the-box candidate, not that thing that happened to us that we're all trying to get over.
Yeah, I mean, just once more, I want to drive home that if you're a school board that tries to union bust, a school board that claims you don't have money, and wow, look at these teachers who refuse to, to take a hit because, for their students. And then once push comes to shove, it turns out you actually had all that money all along. I mean, I feel like this is the proper result. You have to face that consequence. And Jesse Ryan was the face of that really kind of gross result, where it turned out like after the school board time and time again said that there is no money to pay our employees, it turned out it was there. So this seems to me like a great thing for workers and for unions as well.
This is a big win for the unions. I think they're sending a strong message, for sure.
Absolutely.
And then there's our other dear friend, Nyla, Pope Hardin.
Yeah.
Her race did not go as well as we'd hoped.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really looking forward to the final numbers on this one, because I legitimately don't understand. Not to say that Jamie wasn't working for it. I know she was, but like, this should not have been such a sweep. Like, what happened?
I don't actually recall having gotten anything from Jamie.
So I don't.
And I live in that district, and I got mailers weekly from Nyla, and I did not get anything.
Well,
and I also got a door hanger. Yeah.
She had the Democrats. She had all of these different endorsements. I'm just like, I don't. So I'm
now
really
maybe I was taken off the list because I had a Nyla yard sign, and they were like, "Why bother?"
Like, no.
Yeah, we'll skip that one.
But yeah, that one I'm really interested.
I didn't get emailed with either, so I'm really surprised.
But
and I didn't go until the day of the election, so I wanted all the mail lit pieces, and I didn't get any.
I think regardless, though, I mean, Nyla ran a hell of a campaign. I mean, if this ends up not working out in her favor, I really hope she runs for something else. She's ready. And
same.
We need her somewhere in office. So
she's young, charismatic, smart. Like this was a solid first run. I'm sure she's learned a lot from it. So you've got a whole community behind you on the next one.
Yeah.
And I know people don't declare super early for, the school board races. I think almost all of the candidates like kind of, put in their paperwork on the same day. But I especially think this is a hard won race in a pandemic. I think, for all the folks who win or, are working their campaigns, like this has been hard because, with the exception of like Pastor Les and Mai, who like had time before the pandemic to run, like, and then the second wave of their election was in the pandemic. Like all these other candidates who are running for school board and things like that, their entire campaign was basically taking place during the pandemic. And so it changes the game. It changes, people's engagement with the races. It changes, your ability to have forums and to be able to knock on doors and have conversations. I mean, I think about all the lit that was dropped, including in the races that I was working on. And this is one that I did, but I also think about the fact that I didn't get to talk to anybody about Nyla, you know what I mean? Like, because we weren't having those conversations in that way. So I missed out on all those opportunities to be able to tell people a story and to be able to connect with them. And I just wonder how that plays out when you're not somebody who is, you know, who has at least the beginning part of a race to do that. So,
yeah.
I mean, let's talk to, you know, our special guest about this, right? Like, Katie, so much of what was special about your campaign and what people talked about it was that you knocked on their door personally, even people who ideologically might not be similar to someone like me. Trying to run a campaign like that, full on grassroots, people power, post-COVID, would have been, I assume, just a whole lot harder for you.
Oh, I don't know how.
A powerful incumbent, yeah.
I don't know how we would have done it, honestly. I mean, you had to lean a lot on phone banking, which is really volunteer intensive. And like, yeah, I mean, that's why I think we're seeing some of these wacky results, honestly. And there's every once in a while, there's a race that you're like, what? Like Regina Banks too at Elk Grove, right? I'm just like, wait, what? Like, how did that happen? And that's the only thing I can think about, right? Is like you weren't able to connect, because when someone connects with Nyla, it's like obvious, right? I mean, you all saw it in the podcast episode. It was like, shit, you're amazing. But it's hard to communicate that on a piece of paper or even on a voicemail. So yeah, I really hope she runs again. I hope, and now I'm so glad so many more people have seen her awesomeness. And so I'm like really excited that she didn't tell in her story when she was like, came back and was couch surfing and found out she was pregnant, that she was actually on my couch at that point. So we've been close for a while. And so I really, really am glad people see her for how awesome she is and hope she runs again.
Yeah.
I got to think she will.
I hope so. I'm going to keep asking.
We won't force you. Nyla,
we're just going to keep reminding you.
We'll start getting a little annoying after, you know, a few months. Should we run through some props? I don't think we should do state senate or assembly this episode. Honestly, there's a whole lot to happen in the next few weeks, so let's just hold off on that. So let's talk props. How do we want to do this?
I want to preface this with reminding listeners that like half the ballots are in, and a lot of these props are like within like 5 points, meaning that there's definitely room for these things to switch. So I think we should make a note of the ones that are kind of up in the air versus the ones that seem like they're pretty much of a lock.
I was going to say, if they're too close to call, we don't even have to spend much time on them. Yeah.
Well, let's lightning round them.
All right.
Starting with 14.
14, that's too close to call, right? It's the bonds to continue stem cell research. That's 51% yes, 49% no. Mm-hmm. Who knows where that lands and if the state gets the money to continue that research.
Yep.
I quietly would like that, but maybe.
Yeah, I mean, we endorse where we recommended yes on that one when we did the prop show.
Yeah. Prop 15. That's we had the DSA folks on to talk that one with us.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's also too close to call. I think it's like 48.3 to 51.7. So it's within striking distance.
It's a reminder. That's the taxing the corporations one. Schools
right
first.
Yeah. Any properties valued over $3 million.
It's like this stuff like this is so depressing to me when it gets voted down. It's just like, really, like we can't even agree that like properties over $3 million can maybe be taxed a little bit.
It's
so, like,
not voted down yet, though. It's not.
Okay,
people were really worried about this
too
one.
Close, guys. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying people were really worried about this one because they felt like the cost would be passed along to small businesses who were hurting during the pandemic. My argument about that is the argument I make for lots of things, which is organized, because in a pandemic, the likelihood of them being able to just replace you the next month with another tenant is probably pretty slim. So organize, like now you could probably lock it in. And then once they absorb the cost, maybe the likelihood of them coming back to, raise your rent at some point in the future is, lessened. So
That's actually happening in Sacramento right now. Actually, I talked to some business owners on K Street who are organizing to push back on their landlord. And I'm like, good.
I had a friend who asked me about that actually, too, in the downtown K Street
They're
area.
starting to get organized. But this is one too that I like. It depresses me, but I'm going to try to be a silver lining.
The show's not over.
Where I'm like, it's not over, but also like silver lining is I think a lot of folks who voted no on this were doing so because they were worried about the small businesses and the angle that NAACP and our friends
no
like with people of color because some people saw those ads and thought, oh my gosh, this is going to hurt business of color,
but not the
but it wasn't NAACP.
It was California. Sorry,
it was, what's her name?
Alice Huffman.
Sorry.
It was Alice Huffman.
It's Alice using their name.
Yeah.
But it is like, so I'm trying to say silver lining is if this does go the other way, I think a chunk of that is because folks were doing it for the right reason, because they were worried about small business owners of color. And so
this is why Alice is fucking shit up when, it really, we could be helping people. And that's a real, it's a problem. And that's what She's been doing this for 2 decades.
Yeah. I put that, somebody on Twitter earlier today was like, yeah, well, but Black people are only 6% of the population in California. So this is more, the results of all of these propositions that I was really disappointed about are more about, other people just not, being on board. And I said, yeah, but I think that there are a lot of low information voters out there who look through their guide, and when they see the NAACP is against something and then they see 150 ads for it, they're like, okay, that's the way I should vote. And the NAACP is like confirmation that I'm doing it for equity and I'm doing the right thing. I keep seeing these ads that are making compelling arguments to me. And I think that's the danger of having, I think for more people than we know, seeing the NAACP in opposition would make people go, wait, what's going on here? What should I do? Right. But when you see them and then the wind is at their back, you're like, yeah, this must be the right thing to do.
Yeah. We got to keep moving. Number 16 or Prop 16, affirmative action. That looks like it's going to be a no. It's 44 to 56%.
Yep.
I don't know what to say there.
Nothing. It's just like, well, everybody is patting themselves on the back for the fact that California went blue at 8 p.m., on Tuesday. I'm like, this feels like another 2008 or many of the other times that this has happened where we do something that people can celebrate, but another aspect of their identity is attacked, right? This is Prop 8 all over again, which was same-sex marriage. It's like, all right.
Is a state that might end up with 32 Democratic senators to 8 Republicans, and we can't pass affirmative action. So how fucking progressive are we really?
Right.
Not at all.
This is a litmus test. Like I said, I think I can find an argument for almost anyone how it went the way it did, but this one I'm like,
yeah. I mean, it tells you what the Democratic Party is, in my opinion. And I think it is the largest umbrella that you could imagine, to a point where it means nothing anymore. It's just, that's kind of where I am on it.
Yeah.
Number 17, restore rights to vote after prison term. Former felons who've done their time can vote now. I mean, this is 60 to 40%. This passed.
That was amazing.
That's really amazing.
This is also a no-brainer. I cannot on this is a, if you're voting against this, you can go fuck yourself kind of thing on my end. It's I don't, I do not, there's no justification to vote against this. This is a no-brainer. This should have been done 100 years ago.
Oh, absolutely.
It should have never not been done.
Exactly.
If there's
we
one
should be like Vermont and let people just vote by absentee from prison, but we can start that conversation at another time.
I mean, if there's one 90s liberal spell we've broken, it's that sort of tough on crime bullshit in this state. And we can actually make some real headway there, which is kind of nice to see.
Absolutely. Between this and another one we're going to talk about, it's like when you look at sectors, criminal justice, like we're doing better, and that feels good. It sucks that we haven't gotten there with renters' rights.
But thanks to Michelle Alexander, because I really do think the new Jim Crow set us on a path to be having these conversations.
Absolutely.
Oh God, she changed the entire discourse.
Changed the game. Cite Black women.
Cite Black women. Number 18, 17-year-olds, if you turn 18 in the general election, maybe you can get the right to vote in the primary. California said no.
This is another one that's just like, why would you vote no on this? Like,
it's Measure B all over again.
What reason could you because like, if you remember the fucking voter guide, like the arguments for and against, like the arguments against this were like 17-year-olds' brains are not developed enough. It's just like, what the fuck? Like, I'll tell you, like, one thing, easy out the gate. I would rather have 16-year-olds voting than have these fucking like late septuagenarian, octogenarian votes. Like, absolutely.
Totally. I'm going to do a signature campaign to stop voting at 75.
Yeah, for sure.
See how that fucking feels.
Yeah.
I just really think that this argument is so vapid because you're telling me, like, let's take this year. Primary was on March 3rd. If my birthday was March 4th, I didn't get to vote, but you're telling me my brain's not developed enough. like I'm 17 and a half. We're talking 6 months. If this were a baby, I would say sure. But the difference between a 17 and 364-day-year-old and an 18-year-old is does not exist in real or statistical terms. Like, this is ridiculous.
I wonder if there were like commercials against this where it was like when they're 17 they're doing this and it's a kid that's like,
oh, like 100%. Like every no voter on this is just imagining like some kid like skating you know, and like grinding on their curb and you know, spray painting stuff.
Did they turn 18 and stop doing that? Like, that's
no, but this is how the commercial ends. Yeah. So then it's like, but when they're 18, they're like this. And it's like a college Republican that's like got a skinny tie. And it's just like
a bow tie. The college Republicans wear bow ties.
Oh, that's true. I'd like to pass my ballot through this little slot here. And like, that's how that commercial works.
Amazing.
I also feel like this might be one of those, like, I never really saw any commercials for this one. I didn't get any mail. And I think this might be one of those things where like there wasn't any information out there. And so people were just sort of judging and didn't judge appropriately.
Or they only sent it to 60-year-olds and older. Like
everybody else skipped it. The 60-year-olds were like,
very intelligent Facebook ad campaign. Yeah.
I would love to like uncover some lit that's just like these teenagers will fucking spit on your car and, you know, whatever. Like if they were running like some undercover, like extremely negative campaign against this, that they were flyering only to like super old people, that would be an incredibly amazing
painting
campaign.
17-year-olds as Antifa. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I love it.
All right. Prop 19 changes certain property tax rules. That is a tight one. It's leaning yes. I believe we landed on yes, but I've seen differences in opinion on that one throughout the progressive
Katie's
sphere.
a no.
Yeah,
I'm a negatory Batman. I mean, the 55 and older thing, it's just so arbitrary. And like, I wish it was like income based or something that was more clear. Like Jeff Bezos is what, 56? So like he gets to transfer his property tax rate. Like now, like I think there's a way to do it a little more nuanced, but it's not like it's the worst thing ever. It's just not great.
I won't be too mad either way with this one.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because
it also means though his kids
one way or another.
Yeah, I mean, it also means his kids don't get to like pass on their properties and pay those low tax rates either if they're not living in the properties. So I'm kind of like, this is one of the ones where I was just like, I won't fight with anybody about it because I think there's good stuff and there's bad stuff in it. And I think if it passes, there's some stuff in it that I wouldn't have added, like having it not be income based. And then if it doesn't pass, I'm like, well, you know, at least Jeff has to pay when he moves. So
well, this is the stuff though, is how they do the propositions well though. Is like they put in the thing that they want and then they package it with something that's reasonable. And then it's like, oh, well, I don't really like that thing, but I like this thing. Like this is how it happens. It's like incremental bad policy happens this way. And that's part of what pisses me off about ballot measures.
Absolutely.
All right. Prop 20. Fuck you, Anne-Marie Schubert. Fuck you. So parole restrictions for certain offenses. Basically, it's trying to turn California a little bit more back towards a law and order state. This was heavily backed by our county's district attorney, Anne Marie Schubert. I think was our sheriff big behind this as
Jim
well.
I'm
Cooper.
sure. Yeah, but it was Jim Cooper.
Jim Cooper.
Oh,
was
Jim
big in
was
this
too.
one. Yeah.
Oh God, I've heard things about Jim, man. I can't say them on the air, I guess, but like, not a great.
We
guy,
said them in the
apparently.
Sister Circle voter guide. So if you'd like to know all of the things, you can just read the guide.
Okay, I'll check that out.
No, it is heartening that this is doing so poorly.
Yeah.
This is like obviously a bad idea on its face to anyone who isn't a fucking asshole. So
Yeah, but
I'm
you heard
happy
a
that
lot
it's
of
getting killed.
messaging. I did like a high school panel right before the election, and one of the students that was at McClatchy was just like, well, but like people who like kidnap, I forget what it was, like child trafficking, because like, you know, Prop 47, Prop 57 weren't perfect. You know, the lines weren't cut super clean. But I'm like, no, they have all the tools they need to keep folks in jail if they do something violent or like awful. But like, you know, that's not what this is about. It's about the other stuff. And she was like, oh, but like I heard that a lot in the community. So I was actually surprised to see it by such a wide margin. I thought this one would be closer.
I assumed that the Prop 47 and Prop 57 coalitions, because they had just passed those measures in 14 and 16, still existed and were able to mobilize, because I got a lot of messaging about this because I had worked on both of those campaigns. So I think that there was, you know, I think that was already in existence again, the power of organizing. And so it was able to activate really quickly. I also think that DNA thing was a bridge too far for a lot of people, because what we fail to realize is that when you live in a carceral state, lots of people have misdemeanors and they still vote. And so when they see that you're going to collect their DNA for a thing that they have, they're like, oh, hell no. So you kind of screwed yourselves over there.
Yeah, that's true. All right. Prop 21, basically it would have pushed back on some of the Costa-Hawkins rent control restrictions that lost. I was working on that one too, so that's a bummer for me.
Yeah, it's a bummer for all of us.
Yeah, it was a bad.
It's a bummer for everybody.
It's one of those that was like grossly misrepresented too, because they're like, it's gonna do all these things, and I'm like, it actually doesn't do anything. Yeah. All it does is let local governments do things if they decide to. It was just. Those commercials broke my heart. I mean, my dad was really active in the Vietnam Veterans of America. Can I just say, in like the California VVA, and like seeing the vet orgs get on the opposed for this felt like an extra gut punch too. Because I'm like, seriously, like how many are housing vulnerable? Yeah, I don't know how that happens. It's like it must. But like, I mean, there's so many vets that are housing vulnerable. That was such a huge part of what like my dad was dealing with. Yeah, and. It bugs me. It really bugs me. This one hurts. It does.
I've got a lot of thoughts on messaging on things like this. But the real estate industry has been phenomenal at really misinterpreting and misinforming. They know what's up, but
they know
what
they're doing.
They
just have so much money. They can just dump so much money into misinformation campaigns.
Do fucking idiots like Gil to believe them.
Right.
And, you know, all of our dailies have op-eds in their favor all the time, right?
Yeah.
It's a big deal, but it is a crackable thing though. Like,
it's totally crackable.
But like, as we saw, like, I mean, some of the state Senate and state assembly races that I was watching where oil was coming in hard and like with big bucks, and they lost. I mean, they lost a lot of candidates in the primary. They lost most of their candidates in the general. And it's showing that like it's possible when we focus our counter messaging, and what I don't think we've done, and like you hinted at, right, is we don't have a good counter punch for the industry narrative. When I got to people and said, you know, we can't actually regulate new housing for rent control. This has nothing to do with new housing. Every single time they were like, oh. And I'm like,
yep. Everyone I've called,
I
I turned easy on this.
Yeah, it's just a matter of honing our messaging, and we'll get ahead of this just like we have everything else. It's just
it's going to take time. Yeah. And we'll beat them.
Just in the meantime, people are suffering. And that's the part that's hard, is like,
that's the part that hurts
now. Yeah.
Yeah.
And suffering unnecessarily.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we'll get there. Fuck a landlord.
Yeah. I'm like total, like glass half full girl tonight. I'm like, I have to be.
I appreciate that, because honestly, like some of this is good news, but the stuff that's bad news feels like really bad news.
Yeah.
And I need somebody to have a glass half full approach, because that's not where my head's at, and I need to hear it from somebody.
We're good.
I've been staying
to each other.
generally positive just because the fascist is out, and I'm super excited to fucking browbeat a lib in the White House.
I'm not.
am very, very, very downtrodden by the next one.
Everybody is.
I'm downtrodden.
The whole
by this
nation
thing.
is
This felt like just a
downtrodden by
gut
this
punch.
one. Yeah.
This one, I can't even read stories on it yet. It fucks me. It fucks me up. I can't.
This feels like an ode to capitalism. Like once you get to 21, it just feels like, like this is their song of how this works.
So this
number
is
22.
The Lyft and whatever delivery app-based service drivers or whatever, basically just buying their own legislation.
It removes basically the necessity for when you make somebody work so many hours a week for you on one of your apps, you don't have to consider them an employee, and you don't have to give them healthcare. You don't have to you have no real skin in the game, I guess, and you get to treat them as badly as you want. It's real fucked up. And this passed basically because of money. This one,
They bought it. Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know if you guys were using the apps,
hundreds of millions of dollars.
If you were to use Lyft, they have a thing where it's like, hey, Prop 22 is going to save all our drivers, you know.
So they were sending emails
I deleted
too.
those
It wasn't even
apps,
just when you were in the app. It was like they sent you an email being like, hey, but like this is another one that like, here's my glass half full spin and take it or leave it. But like, some people are citing opinion polls, and I can't find the original source, but I've seen it enough times that I'm like, that 40% of folks who voted yes thought they were voting for living wage for app-based drivers.
Right,
so they
exactly.
knew there was an issue. And that was the messaging, right? It's like, this is going to give them benefits. It's going to give them good wages. So I like to believe that a lot of folks who voted yes were duped by the advertising. It does crush my soul that there's a 7/8 legislative threshold now to change anything. We're basically going to have to go back to a proposition to do anything with this. It's just
wild.
But like, I have to hope that a lot of folks who voted yes.
Profoundly evil.
Oh, no, this sets an awful precedent, and like it shouldn't be allowed. Like you shouldn't be able to say in a proposition, hey, legislature, you can't do anything about this without reaching this ungodly threshold. That should not be allowed. But like
35 senators and 70 out of 80 assembly members, like 35 out of 40 and 70 out of 80.
That has never happened unless it's a non-significant bill. I've never seen that. Yeah. But like, I like to hope that some of the folks who voted yes on this thought they were helping the drivers.
Yeah, but that's also like, it's irritating to me because the tack that they took with it is like similar to the one that we're going to talk about next, the dialysis clinics or whatever, where it's like, if we have to be accountable to our employees and we have to treat our employees well, we'll have no choice but to like fire them and then go to their houses and light their pets on fire. And they act as if like those are the only two options, right?
Yeah.
Like there's no, meanwhile, they spent like, how many, is it like 100? Is it $200 million? $200 million. Like instead of spending $200 million on ads and running a campaign of blatant and evil misinformation, they could have just spent that money on their fucking employees. Like
dude, they've already gotten billions in stock returns. I mean, what was the number that somebody said? Like just in the last couple of days, like their stocks have gone up so much, like they've already made that back.
It's super fucking evil.
It's pretty evil.
It was crazy to me when we published the voter guide on October 3rd. They were at $130 million. And so when I went back and like over time, like as people were having conversations, I was like quoting pieces of it. And I would always have to update that piece of it because by the time I was talking to them, it was 180 million. And by the time I was talking to this person, it was 200 million. It was like, this doesn't even make sense.
No, and this comes back to, I mean, if we're really going to get to a root evil here and just keep it on the radar, campaign finance, right? I mean, like this is something that like, well, you shouldn't be able to spend 200 million in a freaking race. Just like the mayor, he dropped over $1 million on Strong Mayor. I'm just like, that shouldn't be a thing at a local level. I'm sorry, that's too much money. Like,
it's true.
We really get to it. It shouldn't be about who can pay the most money to get into a race and influence the message. That's what we're seeing here.
Yeah.
It's some very disgusting people that are going to devastate a lot of lives.
Mm-hmm.
I want all of you folks who are behind this to know that when we're in power, we will line you against the wall and take your picture for posterity and let them know.
Oh, go ahead.
What?
Go ahead.
No, what? We're just going to take their picture and let our posterity know how terrible they were.
I'm just wondering, like, if the ballot measure that we really need to run is the campaign finance one.
Basically. I mean, if you want to hit at the root of the evil here, I mean, that's just what I keep coming back to. It shouldn't be like this.
Just one to be able to say, like, this is it. Like,
yep.
This is where it gets cut off, both, like, because I really do think that there should be public campaign financing, and it should be like a set amount of money for each side, and that's all you have, and you have to figure it out to do anything else.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, let's move it along. The next one in my mind is like, I mean, affects less people and is sort of a little bit less insidious, but feels similar in reasoning. Is Prop 23, the raising standards at dialysis clinics has failed. It's not close. And it's the same reasoning, right? I mean, it's the same thing as like, hey, look, if you make us do it like a good job with this, then everybody with kidney problems is going to die.
Yep.
Which isn't even true.
Right.
We're going to close all of our clinics and run away from the state.
Right,
Which isn't
exactly.
True. It isn't true. They make plenty of money and they can afford to have a nurse, a physician's assistant, or a physician on site.
Right.
Yeah.
So that sucks. I don't think we need to spend a ton of time there, but that's bullshit.
Yeah.
24 is expand consumer privacy, which it's 56% yes at the moment. Looks pretty good. This one, I feel like I know what Katie would say about this one, which is that the language that they used here was like pretty deceptive.
Yep.
And I would bet that a lot of the people who voted yes on this thought that they were doing a good thing.
Yep.
In general. And that it was like, because I mean, this was one that like when we did the show and this one came up, I was really interested to talk to you guys about it because I didn't really understand it. Like just reading what they had in the voter guide, I was like, wait a minute, I can't tell how I feel about this. I have to imagine that definitely was a lot of voters' experience.
Can I do another like root cause thing? Because this is something that some Democrats really wanted to do for a while, which is redo how ballot statements work or summaries in the voter guides, because like it's hella fucking deceptive and you get to pick like your names and say, oh, it does this and that, and like it should be, they basically want to create this committee, a bipartisan committee that writes the ballot summary for a measure that actually says here's what it does. Because like I had to go to the ACLU analysis to figure out what this one did, and then when I did I was like, oh snap. But it shouldn't be like that. I mean, you should be able to read it and know what it does and be able to make a judgment.
And I was actually also really, to your point about that, really disappointed with the legislative analyst's office this year, because I felt like the 7/8 clause was mentioned nowhere in the state voter guide about Prop 22. And I feel like this was another one where it was like, it was such a convoluted description of what the bill will and won't do that it didn't get to the heart of it. And I feel like that's directly in their control. Like you can call out the pieces of the bill. You can say what this means. And, you know, like, and so I was just like, who was asleep at the wheel at the legislative analyst's office? Because this was a particularly bad year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, let's round it out. The last one, Prop 25, approve replacing cash bail. This is likely no. It's 55.6% no as of right now. My first take on this is that this is also really weird wording and is super unclear. This is like, I mean, the way that this is worded is like, would you like to approve the replacement of the reformation of the redaction of this thing? And I think people get lost along the way. I have a hard time believing that like this many people voted to keep cash bail when taking it off the table was an option.
I think it's both. I did have somebody high up in a previous state administration send me a message to tell me that we had gotten the yes and no flipped in the voter guide. And I went back to the actual guide and was like, no, we don't. And they were like, oh, I must have misread that. So it clearly is confusing enough that somebody who is like pretty policy savvy had flipped what yes and no was. So I agree with you, Skylar, but I also think that there was a hefty opposition to this from progressive folks who felt like that pretrial risk assessment was a problem.
Yeah.
And so
this would have won with their support too.
Right.
I just like I guess my read on it is how hard the fight was to get rid of bail, and now we're just back to zero.
The bail industry. Well, I think I'm in the camp that this is one that I'm pretty pessimistic on, actually. So I'll flip the script on you all. But this is one where I was worried that voting no would preclude the legislature potentially in the future from making further changes. Like, you were basically voting on whether a state law was allowed or not, SB 10. And by voting no, I don't know if you can do SB 10 again. And that's my own, I hope to be wrong, but like I've talked to enough folks that worry that they're not wrong. And so this is worse than just saying we don't like this. This is us basically saying bail bond industry, keep going.
Right. And that's what I was just like, I think it's better to get rid of this industry altogether, because the bail is not only racist, but it's also classist, right? And it's also opaque. Like, we have no clue why bail rates are set at what they are, and they don't require a justification. And I was like, if I have to put that up against just racism, when no matter what we do, we're detaining people without any recourse for them. If you don't have the money, you're not getting out. And if you get caught up in the PRA BS, you're not getting out. So I'm like, so either way, there is a downside to this, but this one at least makes them write down what they were going to do, so we can point to it and say, that's the part right there where the racism can take that piece out, right?
Yeah.
And it also gets rid of this entire well-funded opposition to us to be able to do that.
Right.
So it makes it much easier to be able to go back and tweak things, because we don't have somebody dropping $90 million against us, trying to turn in the fight for their lives to keep their business afloat. Like,
their whole industry afloat.
Right, that's what I'm like. I was like, I watched SB 10 in the legislature, and I was like, I don't know that we can do that. Like, aside from Katie's legality argument, I just don't know that we're going to be able to prevail in the same way, because of just how much time, energy, and money they are willing and able to throw at it. And they will, because they don't want to be literally legislated out of existence.
Yeah. I just don't know. Like, I don't know what I understand the problems with the system that they were proposing as opposed to cash bail, but like, I don't understand what's the preferred system then? What is a system that like the progressive wing would be like, that's the one I like? That I don't think that system exists in like the modern American system of justice, right? Like, there's not a thing that's on the menu that like progressives are going to be fucking pumped about.
I mean, if you're an abolitionist, no, right? Because all of it involves keeping people behind bars. But the PRA that was in the original SB 10 was something that more people were comfortable with. What happened over time as it went through the legislature is that it shifted a bit. I also think that considering people's previous arrests is going to be something that's going to be a bit controversial, because we know the criminal justice system is racist, right? So you're going to disproportionately be saying that Black and brown people can't leave prison because they have a history, right? I mean, so there are some things about it that could be tweaked.
Totally.
But it's also, right now, it's really imperfect in lots of ways. And this was going to be imperfect in one particular way that we all agreed upon, knew in advance, and we're trying to address. Like,
this deeply predatory thing that everyone works so hard to get rid of now. Yeah. Just because it's so frustrating to me. I can't.
Yeah.
Well, I got to tell you, going through all of these props and these measures and these races, I mean, it's got me feeling a little down. You know, I feel like, I mean, we had some wins. We did have some good wins, but we had some pretty bad beats this time around too. And what I'm dying for is to hear about a place where I can go and reliably get perfect takes on not only these issues, but many issues across the board that affect people like me on a local level, on a state level, sometimes even a national or a worldwide level. I wanted to put that to you guys because you seem like you might know. Maybe you could point me in the direction of such a place that could lift my battered post-election spirits and de-stress me a little bit.
If I may, everyone, I think I'll take this. First of all, you know, even if we don't like Joe Biden,
which
some
we
good
fucking
news,
don't,
and we don't. I don't. He is going to be the reason that Donald Trump is no longer in the presidency, assuming like there's not some bizarre coup moment happening. But, you know, Pennsylvania looks like a win. Nevada is definitely a win. Those two are in the bag. Georgia weirdly might go to Biden. So we're good there. It's good news. I relish the idea of hating and fighting Biden for the next couple of years.
I'm too excited about this, Dave.
Why?
That's not how it's going to be. This is the next 4 years are going to be like corporate Dems yelling at you for being a progressive, and you're the reason why, like, you know, all of this shit is really bad. That's how it's going to go.
The best defense is a good offense. So let's talk about this offline. But I think we've got plenty we can do to them, and I'm excited for it. They lost the Senate. Probably there will be 2 runoffs in Georgia. If the Democrats can pick those up, good for them. They lost a bunch of seats in the House, and the guy running the campaign to get more seats in the House is one man named, I believe it's Robbie Mook. Is that his name? Who is the guy who was blamed for fucking up Hillary Clinton's online campaign in 2016. So I can't wait to see where the Democrats put him the head of after this, because he's certainly not going down. This guy's on the up and up in the Democratic Party. So all of that's happening. But these were just 3 of countless perfect takes that we have at voicesrivercity.com. We originally started as a news and arts outlet, running mostly write-ups and things like that. We did Truth to Power essays. We had the original iteration of the podcast run by Anthony Sino. We did awesome little things regarding, I don't know, the Sac Follows the Money project, where we post who's getting what money from where here in our region. And that's always very fun to see, because it's not the largest town in the world, and you can kind of see very fast who's running the show here. So Voices has been having a lot of fun in the last 3.5 years. We only plan to do more and more of these things. We continued with the Follows the Money project this year. We also now have our current iteration of the podcast, which is kind of the central iteration. And that's been a whole lot of fun. You can follow us on Twitter at Voices River City, Instagram at Voices River City. Follow that one. That's very funny. Facebook, Voices River City. We are on YouTube if you want to watch our faces as we talk, Voices River City. And if you want to help put some money down to help us keep this thing running, patreon.com/Voices River City. Please do that. I will love you forever if you do. Am I missing anything here?
Where can I find you personally on Twitter, Dave?
That's a lovely question, and I adore that you would ask me that. I can be found at Kempa on Twitter, YOUKNOWKEMPA.
You can find me at Guillotine for You. That's Guillotine, the number 4, YOU. Quick anecdote. I got into a little Twitter conversation with somebody who I didn't know on election night, who then was like, wait a minute, You're that guillotine guy.
I literally laughed for 5
I
minutes.
finally
when I read
arrived,
this.
you guys. I finally
love it.
arrived.
I love
that
it.
guy.
Well, because your
guy.
response was so perfect. You're like,
Yeah,
you
it
know
was
what?
like-
I
You
don't
respond.
hate that. And I laughed for like 5 minutes.
You know what? I don't hate that. I like it. Shannon is Shan ND Stevens, and I am Flojaune. That's at FLOJAUNE.
And Councilmember-elect, how can we find you?
I am at KD4 Council with the number 4. And yeah, I hope folks follow, because I just want to say before we finish that like we had this moment on a call earlier today where we like celebrated all the down ballot stuff that happened in California and around the country, and just saw how much progress we are making as people. So I don't want folks to leave too depressed. It is sad to see the outcomes not work, but look at the trend. We're coming ahead. We're getting organized, and I think we're on the right path. It's just frustrating that it's not moving more quickly.
And I will say, Democratic Socialists of America had a lot of big wins throughout the country.
Totally.
And
This year, I read a statistic. I can't back this up, I don't think, but I read that Democratic Socialist candidates won like 26 of 30 races they were in this year.
They won an LA City Council seat, for crying out loud, against an incumbent. I'm like, that's amazing.
Incredible. So,
that sounds like the pragmatic candidates to run, then the ones who actually win reliably.
It's funny how we didn't see a blue wave, but we saw the good kind of red wave. It's weird how that works.
I'm reading the tea leaves, and I think we're on this path, at least here in Sacramento. So don't lose faith.
Yep.
People.
No. I mean, this entire election, like Biden won, of course, because Trump is deeply unpopular, but this was possibly one of the worst ways this election could have gone for Biden. He just won very, very weakly. He's going to hobble into office. And it tells me that the Democrats did everything wrong that we've been telling them they were going to do wrong.
Okay, this is a whole episode. So
No, yeah. I'm just saying, like,
I got a lot to
out
say
show,
on this subject.
I'm sure you do. But as we round out the show, I just wanted to make that little note, because people are going to see people start to be like, oh, the Democrats won. It's like, well, let's talk about that more in the future.
Absolutely.
Well, guys, I guess it's a medium night. When we signed off on the last one before the election, we were like, will it be a happy episode next or a sad episode next? And I think it's like right in the middle. I think
well, saying no to fascism feels pretty like upper mid.
Yes.
I just gotta say that.
But that's the thing.
I'm not going to be
If
able
we're
to
not hanging
exhale
our-
on that until Inauguration Day, though.
True story.
If we're not hanging our hats on the president or presidency, it's like, well, the DSA folks, the Democratic Socialists, handled it well. The fascist may be out. Those are two big wins. And the capitalist Democrat had a weird, not so good night.
Well, we definitely have a lot more discussion and a lot more analysis coming down the pipe in the following weeks. By the time we talk to you next, we will have many more numbers. Some things will be clearer, and yeah, we'll cover it then. So everybody, hang tight until then. In the meantime, we want you to know that we love and appreciate all of you. We want you to be safe.
Stay sane.
Stay healthy.
And stay the fuck away from me.
All right, Katie, thank you so much again for coming on the show.
Thank you, Katie.
Always a
Thank
pleasure
you.
to have
So
you on the
great.
show.
This was a great way to debrief. I appreciate you all.
Oh.